Salesforce includes built-in approval process capabilities. An approval process is an automated process you can use to approve records in Salesforce. An approval process specifies the criteria a record must meet before it can be submitted for approval, the steps which are necessary for a record to be approved, and who must approve it at each step. A step can apply to all records included in the process or just the records that have certain attributes. An approval process also specifies the actions to take when a record is approved, rejected, or recalled or withdrawn. Approvals can be useful in various scenarios like sales discount approval, travel approval, expenses approval. For a recruitment scenario, we can have open position approval, candidate selection approval, and final offer letter or remuneration approval. Recruitment open position is the example that we will work on in this lecture. Now, before we start creating the approval process, we need to make some things ready in our org. First, we have to think of the user hierarchy and who will approve certain transactions and at what levels. We have to create the email templates for every scenario in the process, like approved step, rejected step, or withdrawn step, and what email should go back to the initiator of the approval process. The approval process itself will consist of creating the entry criteria for records, decisions on the records, and then the final steps based on the outcome of the approval process. Let us get right into the demo now and see how to create and test an approval process in our playground org. For the approval process example, we'll be working in the AW Computing org, and we have opened the recruiting app. This app includes some positions, and as I mentioned before, we are going to be doing a demo of a open positions approval process. So when a new position is created, a record can be in various status like new, open, or closed. The approval status can be pending, approved, not approved, or recalled. And the way we have set up this app, we have a list of 3 approvers who can approve or reject this open position. So let's start creating a multi-step approval process. Go to setup, and in setup, type approval in the quick find box. Click on approval processes. Select the object that you are trying to manage the approval process for. We are doing this for open position, so select the object position. Click on create new approval process and use standard setup wizard. Give the new process a name, enter a description. Next, this is where we will specify the entry criteria. So use this approval process if the following criteria are met. Click next. In the next automated approver, we'll select the next automated approver is determined by the manager of the user initiating the approval process. Tick the checkbox use approver field of position owner, and then we'll make it administrators or the currently assigned approver can edit records during the approval process. Click next. We'll set the email templates later, so click next for now. Now from the fields that are visible to the approver, we'll select department, education. You can press Control to select multiple fields here. Job description, location, select pay grade, salary range, and skills required. Add these fields to selected fields. Now on the approval page, we would like to display approval history information. So select this checkbox. We'll leave the security settings as recommended. Allow approvers to access the approval page only from within the Salesforce application. For the submitter type, we'll keep owner as selected. Ensure that the position owner, that is the owner of the position record, is included in the allowed submitters. We'll allow submitters to recall an approval request and save this. You've just created an approval process. You cannot activate this process until you define at least one approval step. We'll do that later. First, let's look at the approval detail page and review what we have just created. So we have created a process called new position approval. All positions must be approved by the recruiter's manager and 2 or 3 other approvers. These approvers are tracked in the approvers field on the position object. We just saw those approver 1, 2, 3 on the position page layout. On the initial submission, the record will be locked. The approval steps we have not yet defined. We said we'll do that later. The final approval action, again, it locks the record from being edited. On rejection or recall, it unlocks the record for editing. So now let's go ahead and create the initial submission actions. Click Add New and we'll select Field Update. So when an approval process is submitted, the first thing we want to do is we want to set the approval status to pending. So for field to update, we'll select approval status, and under specify new field value, we'll choose pending. Save this initial action. Now after submission of the record for approval, the first thing it will do is it will lock the record from being edited further, and it will change the approval status to pending. Now let's create the approval steps. So we want to assign the record to the manager of the position owner. Let's name the first approval step as manager of position owner. So this is the step number 1. Click Next. We want all records to enter this step. Next. It should automatically assign using the user field selected earlier. So it assigns to the manager of the user who has submitted the record. Click Save. And again, let's go back to the approval process detail page and review what we have created. So on the approval steps, we have the manager of position owner being assigned. Let's create the next step. Now we want to assign the position approver 1. That's the step number 2. Click Next. All records should enter this step. Click Next. Here we'll select automatically assign to approvers. We'll select automatically assign to approver because on the position record, you would already assign the approver 1, 2, and 3 to this record. So in the approval process, you will go to the related user and select approver 1. When multiple approvers are selected, what do we want to do? Approve or reject based on first response, or require a unanimous approval from all selected approvals? We are going to keep it approve or reject based on the first response. Finally, we decide the reject behavior. What should happen if the approver rejects this request? We want to perform all rejection actions for this step and all final rejection actions. Click on Save. We are still not creating the approval action or rejection action. So let's go back to the approval process detail page. We have step 1 and 2 defined. So let's define the new approval step for the next approver. Follow the steps same as before. The name of this step is position approver 2. Step number is 3. Next. All records should enter this step. Next. Automatically assigned to approvers. Related user approver 2. Again, we have one more step to create. So we'll go back to the approval process detail page. New approval step. Position approver 3. This step number 4. Next. Now for approver 3, let's select enter the step if the following criteria are met. And here we want the approver 3 to come into play only if the position salary range equals 90K to 120K and 120K plus. So any salary range which is above 90K will need approval of the approver 3. Click Next. Assign to approver, related user 3. Save that. Go back to the process detail page, right? So we have the approval steps defined now. The last approval step has a criteria defined. The other 3 steps will be applicable to all records. So now let's create the final actions. What happens when it gets approved? If the approver has approved the record is automatically locked from being edited, and we would add a new field update. We want the approval status to be set as approved. Field to update is approval status, and the specific value we want is approved. Click Save and New. When the position record was created, the status of this record was new, and we will now be marking the position as open. So let's name this step as status to open, and let's save that. So when the record is approved, the record is locked, status is set to open, and approval status is set to approved. Now, in addition to the field updates, we also want to send an email alert to inform the position owner about the approval. For description, enter email position owner about the approval. The email template, we have already defined this as part of the groundwork, and we stored it under a folder called position request responses. So there's a email template called position approved. Let's select that. For the recipient type, we want to send it to the owner. So we have position owner as the available recipient. Let's add that to the selected recipient for this email, and let's save that. Now let's configure the rejection actions. Let's add new Field update, set the approval status field to rejected. So the field to update is approval status, specific value is not approved, save and new. Since it is not approved, we also want to change the status of this position to closed. So we select the field status, specific value is closed, and save that. Next, we have to inform the position requester about the rejection. So set out an email alert. Description will be email position owner about rejection. The email template will select from position request responses is position rejected. We'll be emailing an owner, and this is the position owner. Add it to the selected recipients and save that. Right. So we have set up the approval actions, rejection actions. Next is the recall action. So if the person who requested the approval wants to recall it or withdraw it, we would simply update the field approval status and specific value will be recalled and save that. When the position request is recalled, the record is now unlocked for editing and the approval status is set to recalled. Now that our approval process is ready, the final step will be to activate it. Once you activate this approval process, you cannot add or remove the approval steps. So continue with that, and our approval process is now ready for testing. To test out our process, let's create a new position record, non-technical position. Next, an awesome admin position. Select the approver 1, approver 2, and approver 3. Save that. Now as the record is saved, we can see the status is new and the approval status is blank, and we have the 3 approvers set. Let's go ahead and submit this record for approval. Our process is now kicked off and you can see the status, approval status is now showing as pending, and it has been submitted to the manager of the owner of this record. So if we look at the users, the user who submitted the record has a manager, Kathy Cooper. So let's go back to the users and log in as Kathy Cooper. You can see now we are logged in as Kathy Cooper. Let's have a look at the record we created. If we go to the related list, it shows us the approval history and the status is showing as pending. The user can now see the buttons to approve, reject, or reassign this record to somebody else. So let's go ahead and approve this record. Write a comment and approve. Now the position has been approved by the manager and the step 2 of the process has kicked in by sending the record to position approver 1, which also happens to be Kathy Cooper. Let's approve it again. Once it is approved by approver 1, it is now sent to approver 2 as per the next step in our process. So let's log out as Kathy Cooper, go back to our own login, and on the related records, let's approve this, and shows final status as approved. It does not go to the approver 3 because this record does not have a salary range of more than 90K. Now, if we look at the detailed record, you can see the approval status is set as approved and the status has now set to open. If we look at the approval process on the final approval actions, it has locked the record from being edited. It changes the status to open. It changes the approval status to approved. And it has also sent an email to the owner of the position record. If you followed along in your own org, you can see that an email would have been received by you. We also get a notification saying the approval request has been approved. So this explains how to set up an approval process. There are many steps which are required as the groundwork to setting up the approval process. You have to set up the users managers, set up the profiles of the users so you can log in as the other user, and assign the objects and tabs to the profiles of the other users so you can do all of these activities. To understand the approval process better, I would suggest go ahead and follow some trailhead modules. If you search for approval process, there will be various projects like travel approval process, a recruitment approval process, and a sales discount approval process. Those will give you some practice and hands-on experience with approval process. Let me know if you have any doubts or you face any issues in following those steps in the comments to this video.